Hello everyone and welcome to another scrapbook layout process video. For this video I'm going to use the Let's Go Anywhere paper, and this is the bulk paper that Close to My Heart consultants can purchase in a bulk pack of 12 sheets, but it's also available in the Let's Go Anywhere card making workshop kit. And I'm wanting to create a layout of exploring around the city, so I'm going to use this paper here rather than the passport. And when I pull out a pattern paper, I start thinking of what other colors that I'm going to put with it. Now this can be determined from the photos that I have, or sometimes I'm working on them for in-person workshops and for kits for people to have with their registration, or they can purchase the pre-cut kits. But I know that I'm going to be able to put my photos onto this later on. So when I look at this, I usually work on a white base, and I'm going to hold this pattern paper up to the camera so that you can see all the lovely fine detail in this. It really is a lovely textured print with lots of light and shade, with lots of greens in there, and also these lines which are a deeper green. So I'm just going to lay out the papers that I'm thinking of using for this. I'm going to bring in pine, and I quite like it with the paper, but it's a bit too much same on same. I might need a little bit more contrast. So I'm just going to leave that off to the side here. And bring in a rosemary, but that's a little bit too much of a shift from the colour in this paper, so I'm going to discard that. I love the look of this zip strip on here, and this is a toffee colour, and it's a very small detail on this zip strip. It's like a little geotag, and I know that I'm going to be using that on my layout, and I could use toffee paper with this, but I think what I might do is bring in some Kraft for some added texture to this. Cardstock is generally a flat look to it unless you sand it and give it some treatment with some embossing, but Kraft has this natural texture all built into it. So I'm loving these two colours together, and I think that will work with pine. But then I thought, what about bringing in some blue, because the Harbour, I think, creates a really good colourway with this pattern paper. And even though this is tone on tone printing here with a dark green, the blue with Harbour just brings out the deepness, I think, of the lines on the papers. So I'm going to take away this pine, and I think I'm going to stick with this colorway here. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim off the zip strip. So this scrapbook layout process, I think what I'm going to do is just use one whole sheet of this. I'm going to do some tearing, and I'm going to create a little bit of texture with my elements. And I want to extend this zip strip across more than one page. So I'm going to cut this in half again. So it's a 1/2 inch width. I'm going to make it a 1/4 inch width because it needs to run this way, because these are tiny little geotags. And this way I can extend this across a double page spread. And I'm also going to trim my paper to 6 inches. And just in case I change my mind, I'm going to look at the orientation of this, because I want my pieces to run across the page. So I'm going to go 6 inches. And the reason why I do this, especially if I'm making kits or something like that, if people are making them and they want to flip it over and use the passport side, they can. Bring in my other piece of white daisy. I'm going to align this up so that it goes across. And I'm thinking I'm going to put the little geotag strip at the top of this and have that coming across. And then I'm thinking I might put a panel going down this way to put some photos on, and I might do it on a little bit of an angle. So I'm going to cut this piece at about 4.5 inches. And that's going to go across like this on an angle, and now I'm going to trim about 1 inch off the bottom of that. I'm liking how that's looking, but this is all very matchy-matchy on this side, so maybe what I will do is bring this in just a little bit and cut 1 inch off this length as well. And I like this look a lot more. So what I'm going to do now is distress the edges of these pieces of paper. I'm going to do it on the bottom section of the print, and I'm just going to use my scissors here. I'm keeping them closed. I've done this quite a few times, but by keeping them closed, I've got more of an edge on here, and I'm not going to accidentally cut myself as well by opening them. If you've got a distressing tool, you can use that. It's a little bit more awkward when you're dealing with a bigger piece. So rather than trying to go from this end and it'll buckle, I'm just doing little pieces like this, and then moving my hands down so that I can support the paper. And I can keep going all the way to the end. And I'm going quite heavily with my scissors. And now I can grab hold of this and just support it and keep going back towards this edge here. But what I want to show you is then I'm going to come in with my fingers and I'm going to bend it back even more. I will get a little bit of the colour coming through from the pattern on the other side, but I'm quite loving how this is looking. When you get down to the corner, just use your finger to gently pull it back. And if you accidentally tear this, just embrace it and you can just put a few more little tears coming in here. So where the pattern is coming through, because this pattern paper has a white core, you can actually tear that away a little bit if you want to, if you don't want that extra little pattern piece coming through. So I need to replicate it for this side as well, but I'm just going to put my Harbour cardstock underneath and see if I like that peeking out. I'm going to get a smaller piece. I think that will work quite well, and I'm going to distress the edges of this exactly the same way that I did with the pattern paper. And then I think what I'll do is cut some more photo mats out of this Kraft and possibly have another piece of Kraft coming underneath here. I'm just going to grab a little scrap of that and tuck this under here. I think this is going to work quite well. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the Kraft first. It just continues and brings the Kraft colour down from the zip strip at the top here, and then I might put the Harbour. I think I like that better than having the Harbour colour directly up against this pattern paper. So I'm going to do all the distressing and adhere this down, and then I'm going to come back with some photo placements and some stamping and putting some other elements on here. I've got the base of this all adhered down, and I like how this strip is looking going all the way across. And I've got my Kraft piece that I cut at 4 1/4 by 11 inches. And I'm thinking I'm going to put that on an angle, and I'm also going to do some stamping onto the page, and I want to make a title as well. My photos will be trimmed down, so these mats are 4 by 4 and 4 by 6. This is a 6 by 4 mat on Kraft here and a 4 by 6 mat here. So I'm thinking something like this with my title coming out from here. So I've cut a piece of Harbour that measures 5 inches by 2 inches, and I've got a piece of white daisy that measures 4 7/8 by 1 7/8, and they're going to layer on top of each other and then come out the side here to form my title. I don't want to cover up any more of this pattern, so I'm not going to put a photo here, but if you wanted to add an additional photo, you definitely could above and below here as well. But I really do love this pattern paper, so I want you to show. Now I've also cut some Harbour pieces that measure at 4 inches by 1 1/2 inches, and I've used a corner rounder on them because I want to bring in just a little bit of Harbour onto the edges of these. I can use a silver journaling pen to add some details along here. Obviously, I'm not going to do that right now because my photos aren't down. And I think this is the placement I'm going to go with for this. So I'm just going to move this aside because I've got my title hiding under here because I was having a bit of a play with it all. And I wanted to show you how I work out how big to cut the piece of paper to go under here. I'm using brushed letters alphabet. This is a retired one, but I really like the height of this and I like the texture that it has. So I've laid it down onto my all-purpose mat, and obviously I'm going to need to stamp the E separately from that. So I'm just going to try on my scratch piece of paper here if I can stamp all of this in one go, or if I need to do my letters separately. I'm going to try with Harbour ink. And I like how that looks. I'm just going to bring in my layout onto the left side here and see if I like the look of Harbour next to this, or if I might want to do it in Toffee. So I'm just going to have a play with that. I'm going to bring in my Toffee ink, stamp that up, because my base for my title here is actually in Harbour. So it might look a bit better if I stamp this in Toffee. And I think I'm going to go with Toffee so that it's not Harbour onto Harbour to make it too heavy. And I am going to stamp directly onto this piece because this is a textured alphabet. So I know that if I don't get the perfect stamping with this, it's not really going to matter too much. And I do need to leave some space for the E on the end. So I can use this as a little bit of a guide so I know where to come to. Just centering this onto this piece. I'm applying some firm pressure onto this letting the ink soak in. And I think I do love how that looks. I just need to clean this off and then put my E on a block and stamp that one. I'm just going to put my E onto this 2x2 inch block. But I am going to make sure that it's stamping up okay. And then I'm going to line this up. So I sort of go over where I've last stamped and then move it along. And I'm just going to have a look at this before I put that stamp set away to see if I'm happy with how that looks. And I think that looks pretty good, but I also want to add some stamping onto the base pages. Now I'm just going to bring in this stripe here. So I'm going to ink this up, stamp off lightly, and do first, second, and possibly third generation. I love how that looks. I'm going to do this also over on this side, but I'm going to line it up with the edge of the pattern paper here. I just need to move this down towards me a little bit. Stamp off. I don't want to go quite that heavily. I'm just going to give it a light little kiss there and go first, second, and third generation. Let's bring in my photo strip here and see how I like the look of that. And I think this details the edges of this perfectly. So I'm going to do this for the right page as well. So I'm going to mimic what I've done on the inside edge of this page here so it matches up across to this side. So first, second, bring this one out just a little bit more, and third, and then I'm going to mimic that up in this top right area as well. And I love how that looks. It really does add a little bit of a finishing touch to the layout. It doesn't take long to do and it's very subtle. It's not a lot of stamping on this page, but it's enough to bring everything in together. So I'm going to adhere my photo mats down and then I'm going to think about what other embellishments I might like to bring in. And I've just had a thought about my title. It's looking a little bit flat with all the texture with the paper and these little elements on here. I've decided that I'm going to do some stamping over top. And I thought of that because I had done some stamping off over the top of this and I thought it looked quite good. So I'm just going to commit to this and do a few of these little stamps. Kissing this off. So this is like second generation, third generation, and even fourth generation. It doesn't even have to go to the edge of this piece here. And I think that dresses that up just enough to give it a little bit more interest. So, and this one is just going to go on an angle like this. I'm just going to scooch that down a little bit. And then my Explore is going to go underneath this as close as I can get to the start of the word here. And then my Harbour pieces, I'm not roughening up the edges of these at all. These are just like a little decorative element that can go. They're cut a little bit wide. I wasn't sure how big I wanted to make them. And I don't want to cover up this stamping here. So I'm actually just going to bring this down a little bit. Now I'm second guessing myself as to whether I want this or not. It actually looks quite cute at the top here. Or maybe I'll layer it up under this side. Yes, I think I'm going to commit to putting that piece there and then I'm going to adhere these photo holders down and bring in some further embellishments. I finished this off with some arrows and stars that are from the Let's Go Anywhere card making workshop kit. They are like a chipboard style and they have a wood grain finish to them. So I'll just bring this up a little closer to the camera here. The arrows are actually longer than what I had room for on this page. So I just put them on and I trimmed them off and then they fell onto the page somewhere down around this section and I thought I would add the trimmed off pieces just to the base of this photo like little banners here. And the dots that I've used on this layout are actually a wisteria colour. They're in the purple dots pack and I didn't have any brown ones so I got those out. I know I don't use a lot of purple and I've coloured them with my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers. I've used the dark of both earth brown shades and true blue shades. And I've shown this many times on my YouTube channel, how to customise dots. You can just colour them while they're on their carrier sheet, step away, let them dry a little bit, and then go over again with the colour because the alcohol marker does move around a bit on a shiny enamel dot. So you need drying time and you need to do a second layer. And you also need to do do it so that when you've got the tip of your marker, you go around the edge that is close to the carrier sheet so that the color goes all the way around, not just over the top. Now, I did do a little bit of additional stamping with this stripe image here. You might be able to pick it up. I decided that I needed to put a little bit coming out from the side of this photo strip here, and I've extended across on this side as well. And I think that adds just the right finishing touch to this. So that's my double page spread ready for my City Explore page, but you could definitely reverse the paper and use the passport side to get a different look to this if you had photos from an overseas trip that you wanted to scrapbook. I think this layout would work quite well. And of course, you can always extend the amount of photos that you've got on here. My journaling is going to go just down in this corner over here, or I can put an interactive element with a flip flap or a little pocket down behind this photo here just to create some hidden journaling if I wanted to. I love the addition of the added texture, just using your scissors or a distressing tool to bring the edge of the pattern paper and also the cardstock back a little bit. I think it would have been too heavy to continue that across the top here. I do like clean straight lines, so I like how the top part of this layout is linear and straight and clean cut, and then the texture is on the bottom part of this layout here. I hope you enjoyed the process of me putting this together. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, happy crafting and bye for now.